I will cover for you real quick. It's a 5/4/3, a 5-mana 4/3. It does not get a dumpy stamp. It is not in the council has turned its back on this card. So yeah, we got to make that clear because that is an important stat to this show.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 47. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Hetch.
And this episode is brought to you by Azir and Irelia. Play the deck or counter it.
You decide.
Decide.
So we've taken, there's been some holidays that have been going on. We've been around. You all have still been getting episodes because we kind of pre-recorded some stuff. But in that time frame, there's been this constant back and forth about, is Irelia Azir broken? Will the meta figure it out? The answer is yes and no. So Riot, in a brief news bit, caved in, which is good. Now, I say came to negotiation with the fan base and said, listen, they want to do a larger scale rebalance, not just a rebalance around Azir Irelia, because they think the deck is very important, because it is a unique deck. It is very unique,
yes,
although it is very dominant. So they promised us, hey, just give us a little bit of time. We're going to get you guys something we think you're going to like. And the community said, cool, thanks for communicating. And now we wait. But here we are weeks later on our Darius episode.
And we are still in the waiting process. But I guess we'll just take it from the top to housekeeping.
Yeah.
So you guys can follow us everywhere. And nowadays you can also follow us on TikTok. But, hit us up on TikTok, Twitter, and that is at podcastcor. So at podcastcor. And you can reach out to us at podcastcor@gmail.com. And please leave a like, follow, and short review / comment. And, make the comment with 5 stars, but add a star emoji. And so we're 6 stars.
And props to the person that did that. We saw.
Hell yeah.
I've been arguing with our iTunes, our Apple podcast stuff has been kind of wonky lately. I've been going back and forth with Apple because they don't care about people. But I did see the comment which had the 6 stars, so thank you for doing that. And if we can get some more 6-star reviews on there, more power to you. But
you're a legend.
Yeah, but as long as you're listening, that's all that matters. And if your friends aren't, tell them to dismantle the throne while listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
Oh boy. We're going to make a dismantling the throne joke in the year of 2021 while living in the United States. That's a bold move. Nothing casual about it. What have you been playing? Tell me what you've been playing.
I have been playing Sharvan. So
Sharvan.
So Sharvan is a deck that's popped up during this whole Irelia Azir debacle, which is purely based on 2 characters that weren't played much, Shan and Jarvan, but are very good when it comes to dealing with that strategy for Irelia Azir. So it plays with bubbles. You get the buffs because of the constant chump blocking you're doing. You get the buffs for Jarvan. So when he comes out, it's a nightmare for them to deal with. So they essentially are on a clock rather than them putting you on a clock, right? So it kind of reverses the roles, but it also plays very well against other decks. It's just a really solid mid-range deck that kind of popped out of the woodwork because of Irelia Azir. So I've been playing that, and I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, those are 2 characters, champions that I like playing, so.
Yeah, and definitely the fact that it's more flexible than the other just straight up counters, so that you don't just lose on ladder when it's not Irelia Azir.
So you said you refused to tell us what you were playing, but by law you're required. It says so in the contract.
It has been such a terrible week in the lands of Runeterra, and it's entirely by my own making. So I spent the first half of the week trying to play a couple Malphite decks. Quick shout out to Shane with Twin Suns. I stole his list and started trying to make like little tweaks here and there. I made a Targon Noxus list with Katarina and Malphite. so that
Ew.
I could. So the idea was to get like some like payday stuff to
Yeah.
give, or the might or the card might on Malphite, and then rally with Katarina so that I could just kill someone with
Listen,
Malphite.
everyone is familiar with the very popular duo of Katarina and Malphite.
Oh yes, it's a
like
classic.
Tom and Jerry.
It's so, and then because like after that I was just miserable, and then like Wednesday, it was like Wednesday or Thursday rolls around, I'm still miserable of my own making, and then I get a quest for like trigger plunder cards. So then I've spent the last 2.5 to 3 days tweaking a Twisted Fate Zillion list because I've lost my mind and I don't know what to do anymore. But I'm still having fun, but I'm not winning. I think I've won maybe 5 games this whole week.
I'm so lost.
But it's like I'm still laughing at the end of every one of my games, and I just hate myself. I don't know what to do.
Oh, man. I don't have an answer for you, but I do have the topic for today.
I don't have an answer for you. Get back to work.
So today our topic is bow down to the Axeman. We're talking about Darius, and that's we're dating ourselves again. For you youngins out there, it's the Axeman by Omen. Check it out. Some good old 80s power metal.
If you don't like some power metal, then it just means you haven't listened to it. That's all it means.
Yeah, we're finally talking about Darius. I think, with Noxus, we joke about how much we like to, poke fun at our Noxus listeners as they wait for us to finally cover it. But Noxus is important. We've talked about that over the breadth of the Noxus episodes we've done at this point. So check all of those out before you get here. It's one of those regions you definitely want to listen to in order, similar to when we did our Shurima episodes, so you don't miss any of the little tidbits that kind of put this all together. But Darius is important, and Darius is important right after Swain, which we talked about not too long ago, so check out that episode. But as always, we start with the spells and the followers. So for Darius, it's very straightforward, and we're starting with Decimate.
We're going straight to one of the classics. We're going straight to just some good old bread and butter Noxus, baby.
Yeah. Now this card is an OG card from the beginning. And it's simple big damage. It's a 5-cost slow spell that has deal 4 to the enemy nexus. All right, not much confusion there.
Yeah. For anyone else listening to this that's played a lot of card games in the past, whether physical or digital, everyone knows that face is the place, and decimate is going to the face.
Grug.
Yeah, Krug. SM Orc.
But this card has been played from day one in a lot of aggro mid-range strategies. That's where it fits the best. And it usually functions as a closer to essentially say, by that point in the game, you shouldn't have more than 4 life. So I'm going to go ahead and finish everything off with this spell at slow speed because it doesn't matter. And decks tend to play 2 of these at most. If it's an aggro strategy, they may play 3.
Yeah, you could argue that decks tend to play like 4 because a lot of like those decks, they have that one of Commander Farian at the top, which is going to create 2. Yeah. So like it's like, look, if I don't draw a decimate, I'm drawing a form of decimate. Then because those kinds of decks, they have to have that little bit of reach, that way to get over the top, make sure they get to the face. And
exactly. We
classic.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we do get a quote here though with some flavor on decimate from Darius himself, which is, sometimes it takes tactical genius to break a fortress. Sometimes you just have to hit it harder.
And that quote is going to come very much in play when we talk about Darius himself.
He's a no-nonsense guy, but very practical.
Yeah. There's a reason he's quoted on the card. There's a reason that this is his unique spell. Yeah, there's a reason. We'll get there.
So this takes us to our follower, the Trifarian Assessor. Now, the Trifarian is a wing of the army that is controlled by Darius. And Hetch, when he talks about Darius, he'll tell you more about that. So as you may notice, as a newer player, or if you've been playing, there's a couple cards with the keyword, not keyword, but the header Trifarian, Hoplites 1 and stuff like that. So these all kind of fit within the realm of under the command of Darius. So the flavor on these cards play into that as well. And this one is hella flavorful when we get to like the end of the Darius story here. But Trifarian Assessor is a 5-cost 4/5 that has, when I'm summoned, draw 1 for each 5+ power ally you have. So if the allies on the board have 5+ power, you draw a card for each.
And I will cover for you real quick. It's a 5/4/3. A 5 mana 4/3. It does not get a dumpy stamp. It is not in. The council has turned its back on this card. So, yeah, we got to make that clear because that is an important stat to this show.
No, you are correct. It does not get the dumpy stamp of approval, and thank you for keeping me in check. Can't just go giving those out.
No, absolutely not. You have to earn that stamp.
So yeah, she's a 4/3, and what she does, so she functions as the name says, an assessor, and it fits really well into the Darius story because of the focus on very strong potential and what that does for that wing of the army. Well, we get a good quote here from Legion General that says, it takes a ruthlessly discerning eye to select those worthy enough to become part of the Trifarian Legion, but she can sort the wolves from the sheep a mile away.
And it's really nice because like these cards even have a lot of fun quotes on the board in the game too. So that if you listen to the voice acting, they're all very much a united front. Like they do have the feeling of the Legion, even though they all drive me crazy when you start looking at a lot of historical terms, because the hoplites would be the formations or named to soldiers of the Greek armies, especially the Greek armies that would have been conquered by legions or the legionnaires of Rome. At the later days of when you started seeing hoplites falling off. But no, they're a Trifarian Legion, and we're using Roman pronunciations for the Trifarii. Okay, no, I'm fine. I'll be okay.
See, this is why Riot should hire us for this stuff.
Yeah, I'll call you out on this, and then also go, where's the dump? Where's the dumping?
The dump? But it's I'm happy you called out the voice acting, because that's one of the parts that we haven't talked about in a while that's so good about this game is not just a straight up card game. You have this world within it as you play. So if you ever want to go build a deck with all the Trifarian cards, do it so you can get that kind of that flavor.
Yep. And hopefully we'll get a little more support for Trifarian Assessor, because this is one of those cards that always is just barely on the fence. We will hit a meta where this card just shines, and then everybody will figure out how to counter it, and this card just kind of ends up falling behind, but it never goes too far behind. It's always just right there on the fence because it's a very powerful effect, especially for a lot of mid-range stuff. The ability to potentially draw a lot of cards just for already winning the board is terrifying. So this is a card that I'm always just tempted to be like, maybe I should try to play around with this again.
Yeah, definitely. When you see Noxus and Freljord decks, you're definitely you can guess there's one of these in the deck.
Absolutely. Yeah, you gotta be aware of it. You gotta keep it in your mind, especially after like LeBlanc came out and it was like, oh, are you doing it? Is it you? Are you the mad lad?
So take us to the man himself.
All right. So if it wasn't clear yet, we're talking about Darius, and let's talk about the man who brings the decimation. All right. So one of the things that we are going to mention a lot as far as talking about Darius' story is what a good bit of what we talked about in Swain's story. Because Darius' story mostly takes place before the ending of Swain's story. I'm saying it that way before I spoil it. If you haven't listened to those episodes, here's your warning. I'm about to spoil the Swain story real quick. So pause me now, go listen to it. You've been warned. All right, that's all the time you get. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about what happens before the coup that Swain pulls off in Noxus. And when we're talking about Darius, the very beginning of his story is he's very tight with his brother, and his brother is Draven. Every Runeterra player listening to this is going to recognize that as another champion in Runeterra. So we're going to be talking a lot about the brothers right now, but we're not going to go too in depth with the coup until we get to Draven. So these stories are all very much interlocked, and this is a big reason why Noxus is very important to Runeterra. All right, so now Darius and Draven, they grew up in a port city, in the port city of Basilic. That's the pronunciation I'm sticking with. And from a very young age, they constantly found themselves at odds with all of the street gangs and thugs of Basilic. These two boys were street urchins at heart. And any of our listeners out there who've been sticking with us for a while, first off, we love you. Second off, you're probably right now going, wait a second, Renekton Noxus story? This is very much a similar story of just like the brothers that just stuck it out through everything. The only difference is that Noxus, a very intellectually minded person, started using his brain to get himself out of the streets and put himself in a position to save Renekton. Darius and Draven just started beating the crap out of everybody. All right,
so they're both bruisers.
Yeah, they both were Renektons, and they're just like, yeah. And if we have any like UK listeners, I'm gonna apologize ahead of time, but they just looked at everybody and went, "You want to scrap, bruv?" And they fought everyone. And then when the guards would come to break up the fights, they'd fight the guards. Like these
Our
guys.
Classic line. Fight me like a bruv.
Fight me like a bruv. And for these guys, everything was on site. All right, so that's where we differentiate these two from Noxus and Renekton. And the quote here is that Darius earned more scars by his 12th summer than some soldiers do in a lifetime. Like they just fought all the time. Now, Basilic is a very small port city, not really of any major importance to the whole of Runeterra, but since it is a port city, it's going to be looked at by every nation. So it does, later on within their lives, when they become a little bit older, it becomes conquered by Noxus. And it is after Noxus conquers it, by a war host led by a Captain Cyrus. This is where Draven and Darius's life truly begins, because they find themselves able to join the war host and become contributing soldiers / citizens of Noxus. And they join that war host because Cyrus looks at these two punk kids and goes, "Holy crap, y'all might kill us all. What is going, y'all want to fight with us instead? Like, what the heck?" Like they saw two bruisers and said, "Come on." And
yeah, I could imagine when your soldiers are in port and they're coming back beaten to hell from duty, and you're like, "Wait a minute, I can't have this. What is causing this?" And you find the cause, and you recruit it.
Just some punks.
Just some punks
chilling on the street corner.
Actually, that specific key point here reminds me a lot about when we talked about Vi and how she was so destructive as a rebel that sooner or later she ended up joining the police as a special operative.
Yeah, it's just like, screw this. Instead of trying to arrest you, can we just work together? Just stop beating us up.
Yeah.
That's very much what happens with the Cyrus's war host.
Yeah.
And this is the turning point for the brothers' lives, because as they become true citizens of Noxus, that's where they also part ways, because Draven, he ends up finding his worth in life and what he enjoys, but we're going to talk about that in a later episode. Now, Darius, if anyone's watched the short that we got for Runeterra when they introduced the Noxus region, you know what Darius is about. Darius embodies and he holds so strongly to the values that every citizen of Noxus can earn their way to the top of the ladder through hard work and sacrifice to the nation of Noxus. And that he truly believes that they are all equal as Noxians. And Darius just sticks to that as a fault. And he ends up continuing to try to climb the ranks within the military. And he does climb the ranks, not only because of his prowess on the battlefield, but he does have a decent strategic mind, and he's able to lead troops. And it is specifically his strongest claim to fame, and is one of the largest rises in the military that he had, was after the battle on the Dalamore Plains, where he beheads his commanding officer because his commanding officer orders a retreat. So beheads the general of multiple war hosts and then ends up rallying the scattered war hosts that are in the middle of trying to retreat, rallying them and defeating an army larger than themselves and claiming a massive victory for Noxus. Decimate. All right, there's a reason it's his spell. There's a reason it's a big old axe on it. All right, like it is like, no, Noxians do not run, we crush.
Yeah.
All right, and so it is at this point that he ends up moving up the ranks within the military. He begins to claim fame within Noxus. So even outside of the military, people are aware of who Darius is. And he becomes named, this is where he starts getting to know the Emperor. He's not quite named yet, but it is knowing the Emperor, and he gets his own legion at this point. All right. Now, even though he has his own legion, he does not have a true name to the legion yet. But this is where he begins to establish what is the Trifarian Legion, or specifically the Trifarian standard. All right. When we look at the Assessor and the other Trifarian soldiers who, like, only the best can become Trifarian, this is where these ideals start to be built. And it is with him first coming out of the kind of the bottom rungs of the military after the Dalamore Plains. And it's with this new legion and this new standard that he's able to claim more victories. Well, like with the next big one is defeating the Varju. I have no idea how to say that. This is not it is nowhere near any word that I know. So the Varju at their cloud fortress. All right, so it's a proud race, proud warrior race.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives more of like a tribal feel. I would need to research the Varju a little bit more to see if they were maybe in the Acathian region or something. But this is a place that for decades has held out against the Noxus Empire, and Darius is able to claim a victory. And the victory is described as both using a lot of strategy that all failed, and then he ends up just going beat it down and ends up grinding out a victory.
Yeah.
And it is at the conquering of the cloud fortresses that Darius is officially named as the Hand of Noxus. And he is named the Hand of Noxus by Borum Darkwill.
Never heard that name before.
Oh, something rings a bell. All right. So Darkwill names him the Hand of Noxus and then gives him the most difficult task of every military commander of their entire careers, which is to fight the barbarians of the Freljord.
And if you've listened to our Tryndamere episode,
oh boy.
So it's one of those things where around this time, like we've talked in the previous episodes, Borum Darkwill is losing himself, right? Losing his mind. And to come back from such a victory, to get this title, and then get this ridiculous command, because we've talked a little bit about where things are located on the map, and Freljord is out of the way. It's not like next door. It's not only that it's a very difficult task for the fight itself, like who you're engaging with, but it's also very far away, and there's almost no reason to conquer it.
Yeah, like wars are fought for resources, and they're fought with resources. So you are not going to spend these resources to not get anything in return. And this is why, you could tell Darkwill's losing his mind, because you are fighting the most ruthless creatures on the planet of Runeterra for nothing, for literally a frozen wasteland. And Darius stays out in the Freljord for years. And by comparison to a lot of other Noxus campaigns into the Freljord, Darius has one of the most successful campaigns. And by most successful campaign, it is defined as ending in a stalemate. He does his best. Like, that's all we all wake up every day and we just do our best. But he is captured by the Winter's Claw, which, if anyone has been looking at like Sejuani and any of the cards associated with Sejuani, the Winter Claw is scary. He's captured by the Winter's Claw and escapes with his life. Like the dude, it's not like he's just going up to the Freljord and trying not to freeze to death. This dude he's doing his best, man.
And this is another emphasis on the madness that is Borum Darkwill's mind, because you're taking a newly acquired, very valuable resource in Darius and tossing him in a situation where he should die for no reason.
For ice.
For
a cup of ice. So, yeah, like Darius goes out there and does his best. And this is where we get to Darius returning back to Noxus, as far as with his worst defeat. His worst defeat being a tie. All right? Like, this guy's great, all right? But this is where the Noxus story and how important it is comes together, because what does he return to? He returns to a Noxus that's been flipped on its head after suffering a coup at the hands of Jericho Swain. And the thing that we did not talk about in the Swain episode is that the right-hand man that instigated this coup was none other than Draven, Darius's brother. So now Darius returns to Noxus, probably cold. All right, just like
just a tad,
freezing his butt off,
wearing his Patagonia jacket.
Yeah, just pissed off, tired, and then just looks around and goes, "Why is Draven on the throne? What happened? What did you do, you idiot?" And he now finds himself in this very strange position, because the last time he was in Noxus, he was named the Hand of Noxus. He was given this title that kind of sets him like it's the right-hand man of the Emperor. So he should be loyal to the Emperor in everyone's eyes. But not only has the Emperor been deposed by a general that Darius does respect, because a lot of what Darius learned as far as being a soldier was by watching the careers of other generals, and Darius has been quoted as being very outspoken against how Swain was kicked out of the military, and he was discharged dishonorably, and he very much disagreed with that. not only is this a man that he respects, but he was assisted by his blood and his flesh and blood. He was assisted by Draven. So everyone's watching Darius because it's what is Darius actually loyal to. And all the soldiers that have ever served with Darius, they know the truth, which is that he is loyal to Noxus. And he does not care who sits on the throne of Noxus. He will serve Noxus, and he will do what he believes is right for Noxus. And if they don't do what's right for Noxus, he'll cut their head off himself. He doesn't care. So he ends up assisting Swain as far as creating the new council of Noxus. If anyone is familiar with history, this is very similar to how Rome went from having a ruler into following the Senate before the Senate ends up kind of, getting messed around with, and then you have another line of emperors afterwards. But this is a transition from an emperor to a Senate. But instead of a full Senate, you just have a council with 3 bodies. The 3 bodies, they all have different names. The only one we're going to talk about is Darius's council, because they represent vision, might, and guile. And Darius sits on the council of might, and it is named the Trifarian Legion. So now we have the actual Trifarian Legion. The Trifarii are officially born, but that standard was set long ago by the exploits of Darius himself. And now he hopes to sit at the head of the Trifarian Legion and lead Noxus into further glory and conquest. And that's kind of where we leave off there.
Exactly. It's one of those cases where I've mentioned this in the Swain episode, because we haven't really gone deep into the Trifarics. We will at some point, don't worry. But this Darius part of the story also emphasizes my thought on why the early history of what happens after this is formed is going to be very entertaining, depending on what they do with it, because you're essentially talking about a space that's almost an early democracy of sorts, for a country that has been purely imperialistic up to this point. So you always have conflicts. You're always going to have things that are going to change there, and the way that they interact with the outside world is going to change completely. So it's, once again, Noxus is very important, but it's also very interesting to watch this all develop through these different characters.
Yeah. And we're going to keep talking about how important it is, because you have like the voice lines for all the Trifarian Legion cards. You have the interactions between Darius and the soldiers in the game. And we have not been shy about this. We are so hyped for the idea of an MMO. We are just permanently waiting for any time Riot tells us more about it. And this is probably one of the stories that we're always going to bring up. Like, it may not be the first one we bring up. We're always going to bring up the Noxus coup and what an MMO could do with that.
Yeah.
Because it's just perfect. It's so well written for what MMO players want. Like, this is what we would want.
Yeah.
So Riot, please, it's at podcastcor@gmail.com. Please. But yeah, so before I go too crazy with that idea, we got to talk about the card.
Yeah.
Because Darius has a card that is absolutely perfect for the Noxus region. It is absolutely perfect for every aggro and mid-range list. The decks that have cut Darius do so just because there are cards that just fit it better, but he will always fit there. Because this is what I like to see. Someone with a very smooth brain like myself can play this card with success, and I love it. So Darius is a 6 mana 6/5 with Overwhelm, which as an aggro player, I like Overwhelm. Let's do it. And his level up is very simple. I see the enemy Nexus has 10 or less health. All right. And talking about Decimate, talking about how faces the place. you know what? How do you level up Darius? You go to the face. All right, that's how you level him up. And what happens when he levels up? So Darius is one of the very few champions in this game that does not follow the traditional level up criteria, which is almost every character, they level up, it's +1/+1. Darius does not follow that. Darius is a massive +4/+1. So he becomes a 6 mana 10/6 with Overwhelm.
And we love the magic of math here, guys. So Decimate is 4 damage. Darius is 6. 6 + 4 is 10. We did it.
All right. So, and with the magic of math, max health is 20. So then Darius levels up when they become 10. 20 minus 10 is 10. And 10 minus 10 is victory. Ain't it beautiful? Isn't math great?
Dude, math is beautiful.
If you haven't tried out an aggro strategy, just think of it as math.
I want a t-shirt that says math is art. Not just because it's sort of reductive, but also because it would piss off everybody who reads my shirt.
That would be good. And just put a dumpy stamp of approval on the back.
And put a dumpy stamp of approval around it. The confusion. We're working on our shirt ideas as we speak.
Yeah, so now Darius is just a great card as far as just it's simple. It's sometimes simple is good. We talked about that when we went over LeBlanc's card, which LeBlanc, it makes a lot more sense because it's exhausting to try to imagine how to translate the League of Legends character into Legends of Runeterra. But with Darius, it's just simple. But he translates a little bit better because, Darius just kills people. So yeah, let's just kill people. Let's just do that. Otherwise, not a lot of depth here. And why? Why? Sometimes you just need to go to the face.
Exactly.
And instead of giving depth to the card, they give it to the flavor because the quotes on this, it really kind of gives a better idea of Darius and this duality of having a good mind for being a general while also just wanting to still be the street urchin, the 12-year-old kid beating the crap out of the city guard. Because on his pre-level up, we have an iron will and a titan strength. There is no finer general to lead the Trifarian Legion. A direct quote from Swain. And I mean, like growing up in the United States of America, like that's some crap that they would teach you in like your 5th grade, 6th grade social studies
Good
class.
old propaganda.
And it's like, like listen to these quotes from presidents talking about these fine generals going into the World War I and leading the doughboys. All right. All right. So it's like, yeah. So that's the kind of guy you got. So, Uncle Sam's here looking at Darius. And then we flip over into this 10/6 Overwhelm card. And instead of a Swain quote, we now have a Darius direct quote, which is, "Stand in our way and I'll cut you down myself." All right, heads will roll. Decimate.
Decimate. And I think with that takes us into our part of the episode where I always have a question and or challenge for Hedge. And
oh boy,
this one is directly related to these generals. So in the following list, who would you rather follow? And I'm not going to give you everybody because that's easy. I've picked 4 because of their insanity. So you can either follow Darius into battle, you can follow Renekton into battle, you can follow Sejuani into battle, or Tryndamere. Which one do you prefer? I'll go first. For me, obviously this question is meant to be tough right? Because they're all psychotic in some manner.
Yeah, meant to be tough. I know who you're picking already. So just go ahead and say it. Oh yeah. Like you got called out, and now you're just
all
like,
right,
no.
all right, Mr. Big Stuff. Who am I gonna pick?
Sejuani. You're gonna pick Sejuani.
Well, yeah, just to make my queen. Okay, listen.
Yeah, like look at you, right. Look at you, like just trying to cover, trying to be like, no, it wasn't Sejuani.
So maybe I broke my own question. I'm picking Sejuani because I would be an agent for my Queen Ash. I would be operating as a spy.
I knew
from
it.
inside. So my goal is always to make her happy. Therefore, I must. How dare you call me out? How rude!
Hey! If you would put any Demacian general on this list, I would be saying it for yeah. You know, I gotta get close to the Crown's Guard. Lux.
No, the Demacian generals have too much sense, which is why they didn't make the list.
I'm actually really conflicted on this one because then it's like because I don't see survival happening with any of these generals, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, well, so which one, like, so how feral do I want to become? All right.
Yeah.
Like, how crazy do I want to be?
And yeah, think about yourself as you are now mentally. The amount of psychological horror you will have to go through. You're going to change as a person no matter who you follow in this. But the question is, one, will you survive? And two, do you come out the other end of that pipe with some resemblance of humanity?
Yeah, I think like at the end of the day, I would have to go probably with Tryndamere, because like at least with Tryndamere, it is just pure unadulterated anger, and he does have like this, like I think like the reason I could pick Tryndamere is because whenever he is kind of reined in by Ash, it's like, oh look, a sense of humanity is left, because it was up in the air as far as just with Renekton, because then it's like, okay, everyone just channel this unadulterated carnage. All right, it's like you see something, you kill it. But at least Tryndamere, I think, would be diving deep enough in to where I could lose my mind and then just die at my enemy's hands. Whereas Renekton isn't going to dive deep enough in to where I could die at my enemy's hands. So like he's going to hit the line, and then he's going to start following that line of battle horizontally instead of vertically. And
he might end up killing you himself
and kill both sides. So like at least at that line of battle, Tryndamere is going vertically away from me. So I think it would be Tryndamere.
Okay. And as we get further into like content, I think we might come back to this concept when we go to more higher level things, as far as talking about the type of imperialistic groups that we see and how they operate, the comparisons, the differences, because I mean, we always compliment Riot on their storytelling, but they're similar enough for relevance, so it's easy to relate between them because they all exist in the same world of Runeterra. But they also have their nuances that are different enough to keep them interesting, and that also apply to their situations, right? Because, like, for example, like the Tryndamere Sejuani situation in Freljord is such a long-standing existence in that those three main tribes, that's a way of life for a lot of those people involved. Whereas like the Darius situation has become very new. This is a very new thing to Noxus. So that's a cool difference in the approaches to that barbarian / savagery culture. Yeah,
and it does give just enough to where we can still talk about how like Sejuani and Tryndamere are different, like because like just with this example, like Sejuani is fighting for a tribe that has had nothing by Freljord standards, has had nothing, and they're fighting for survival.
Yeah.
Whereas Tryndamere is like, I survived. Dang it. It's like, yeah, sure, like you could argue they're both fighting for survival, but there are like enough of a difference to where we can split them up. And Riot has already shown that they there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it, and they are doing cool stuff with it. So it's I mean, that's why we're still here having way too many conversations about these characters and their stories.
Exactly. So we'll revisit this. But as always, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Take care, everybody.